I decided to translate a Chinese game called Cradle of Nightmares, often referred to, by me, as Chinese Funger or Chunger. If you've never heard of Cradle of Nightmare until now, someone asked themselves, what if I took Fear and Hunger's atmosphere and story and limb system and combined it with the combat system from Black Souls? Would that work? The answer is, yes! Yeah, it works and the game rules. It may actually be one of my top 3 games ever? If you're not familiar with Black Souls, the developer essentially tried to take Dark Souls combat and move it into RPG Maker using an active time battle system. If you think about it, Dark Souls is basically a turn-based RPG. You have to wait for your opponent to perform an attack and then dodge and counterattack repeat. You could port that to RPG Maker, right? Turns out, yes, completely. It rules. It's genuinely one of the coolest core combat systems I've seen in an RPG Maker game. It genuinely feels like Souls combat. Cradle of Nightmares took that concept and applied it to a mix of Bloodborne and Elden Ring. So instead of having a sword of Night and Flame, you have a gun of Night and Flame. If you're not familiar with Fear and Hunger, what are you doing on my channel? Are you some lost child whose parents thought autoplay on YouTube was an acceptable substitute for parenting? If so, I am deeply sorry about how traumatized you're going to be. But at least take heart that their actions aren't evil, but karmically neutral. Yes, they destroyed your future, but I'm making 1/10 of a penny in ad revenue off your ruined life, so it balances out. In Cradle of Nightmare, you play as Lei King,
乐情
Lu Qing,
乐情
Lo Qing,
乐情
Liu Kang, a normal Chinese schoolgirl. Well, sort of normal. As normal as an eye bag wearing sweet addicted femgooner that brings 15 knives to school can be. And I can already hear the army of e-girls shrieking, oh my god, she's literally me! You're on your way home from school when, at 10:08 p.m., the world ends. You wake up in your home months later. The last thing you remember was a man giving you a keycard and a weapon. You take a look outside to see what happened and learn a few very important things. Everyone's immortal now. Everyone's incredibly powerful now. There's no sun anymore. Your hometown is sinking into the night sky. You can look down from cliffs to see the moon. And think of it like this. You know how in Fear and Hunger there's a magic throne that makes you incredibly powerful and immortal and lets you change the world? What if that happened to every living creature at the same time, everywhere in the world? That's this game. People get to experience the agony of dying over and over and over again until they go mad and wind up basically moon scorching. You can go crazy too, and that brings us to your mental health. See, you have a meter that's like humanity in Dark Souls, but also like hunger in Fear and Hunger, and also like insight in Bloodborne. It goes down when you experience horrible things like the violence of combat, unimaginable monsters from beyond time, or the agony of death. It goes up when you do things that raise your mood, like eating sweets, or bullying people for fun, or reading H-dojins, or using humanity as in literally that Dark Souls item. As it goes down, so do your stats, just like hunger from Fear and Hunger. On the other hand, certain things only exist at low enough mental health, although it's hard to know if you're finally seeing reality or something that's only in your head. On the other hand, if it's too high, humans invade you and their blood on your hands stains your soul. Permanently. There's no right amount of humanity. There's only your preferred flavor of poison. The game's Souls-like design roots make it ludicrously more forgiving than Fear and Hunger. You're immortal, just like everything else, so dying only costs you some of your held souls and sends you back to your most recent flower vase. On top of that, it just has an Estus flask. Plus, if you're really stuck, there's always the option to grind enemies to gain levels, and you can save anywhere. Struggling before a boss? Plop down your own checkpoint and load from the menu. You probably don't actually want to save beforehand, though, because this game's world map is so dense that you'll find new stuff every time you run through an area. Just so far, I've found nine routes out of the starting area that lead to new other areas that also lead to each other and other areas. I've been playing this with Hazmat VT and Madedu, and despite having over 80 hours of gameplay between us, we're still finding new secrets just in the starting area. And that's just one area? The scope of this game is ridiculous. It's like if Elden Ring took place entirely inside one giant labyrinthine dungeon filled with countless shortcuts and interconnected routes, all of which play different from each other depending on which of the 5 entrances you took to get there. And they all change based on your mentality when you go through them. Even if you played the same class and went to the same areas, it would be a totally different experience if you just used a different entrance or died less. Oh, right. This game has classes and character builds, and you can make like a mage that charges up a giant instant death laser, or a bandit who spams bleed with dual claws, and it's Elden Ring. It's literally just Elden Ring. It has all the builds from Elden Ring. If you ever thought Fear and Hunger had a cool world, but you wish the gameplay was Elden Ring, it's this game. It exists now. And thanks to me, you can play it in English. It's pretty simple to install. Just download the game off Steam, download my patch, right-click it in your library, manage, browse local files, extract my patch over the game's data, and you're done. Overwrite everything and hit play. But I do need to make a couple of confessions about this patch. One, I don't actually speak Chinese. I know enough kanji to recognize some of the characters, and I can muddle my way through and piece together how things work and what each character means, but I don't know the language. I do know something that does. Various Chinese-made LLMs. They're fluent in it. Fluent enough that they can spot puns and figure out a ton of stuff that a normal translation tool wouldn't spot. They were the backbone of getting this translation work done. They're context-aware, so I set up a crude glossary to get translation terms consistent enough to be playable, but this is just a version 0.1 translation, so it isn't as complete as I'd like. 2, I don't actually know this engine either. You're gonna see a bunch of weird things in there, like quotes appearing around text that it shouldn't, because I just wasn't familiar with the engine's programming language before I started the project. Had to learn all of it from scratch, which is why this took 2 weeks to make instead of 1. You'll also likely see messages running a few letters past the edge of text boxes from time to time, but again, 0.1. I'll fix it eventually. I'll get everything nice and professional, but right now it's playable. And before I close out this video and let you run wild in this masterpiece of a game, I just want to leave you with a couple of tips that will save your bacon. First off, not every action consumes your turn. Using an Estus flask is short enough that you can still attack afterwards. Several buffs like Battle Breath work that way too. Changing equipment is also free, but free skills and items can only be used a certain number of times each turn, based on the number you see at the end of the description. Plus, they're limited by how much stamina you have. Second off, every weapon gives its own set of unique skills. The longsword lets you hit every body part in a fight, while the club lets you stun one target. Every weapon has its own role because it's Elden Ring. Third off, use stealth. If you use the stealth skill from the menu, enemies can't spot you on the overworld. If you walk into their back, you perform a backstab, which deals a ton of free damage and puts them in opening, which means they're stunned and take more damage. Fourth off, if you head left at the start, go into the bathrooms in your apartment and interact with this wall repeatedly, you can find a secret passage into an underground area. Right past the bonfire is a chest that has a hammer. This hammer has a skill that can heal you for about 3,000 hit points. In a pinch, you can switch to it and heal. Fifth off, if you see an obvious trap, press interact to get around it instead of walking into it. You'll get around it safely that way. And lastly, if you're really desperate, have you noticed that when you die, you get a sticky white substance? If you go to the blacksmith at the south end of the Ashen Ballroom, you can use it to craft an item that gives you an absolutely ridiculous permanent stat boost at the cost of a piece of your soul. Anyway, links in the description. Patreon link is also down there, and supporters, whether through Patreon, YouTube memberships, or Twitch subs, get access to updates a week early. And if you're that small lost child that somehow made it through all this without crying and getting your iPad taken away, man, you're so hosed when you're adults, but go watch my Fear and Hunger videos.